There's a memory you're certain about, a specific moment from childhood, maybe a birthday, maybe a summer afternoon, maybe something small, the color of a dress, the smell of a room, a face at the end of a hallway. You can almost feel it. It seems as real and solid as anything you have ever known. It probably never happened. Not entirely, anyway. And the disturbing part is not that your memory got it wrong. The disturbing part is that the version your brain invented feels more vivid, more emotionally complete, and more convincing than most of the things that actually occurred. Your brain did not fail you. It did something far stranger. It replaced reality with a story, and then convinced you the story was always the truth. This is not a rare malfunction. This is how memory works for every human being alive. Think about a film you watched years ago. Not the plot, a specific moment. A look on someone's face. A line of dialogue. You remember it clearly. Now, imagine finding out that moment was never in the film. The line was never said. You filled in a gap with something that felt right. And over time, the feeling calcified into certainty. Psychologists call this a false memory. But that name undersells what it actually is. A false memory is not an absence of memory. It is the presence of something your brain constructed, polished, and filed away as fact. The person who first understood the full scale of this was a cognitive psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus. In the 1970s, Loftus ran a series of experiments that would eventually change how courts handled eyewitness testimony, how therapists approached recovered memories, and how scientists understood the fundamental nature of the human mind. Her method was simple and devastating. She showed participants footage of a car accident and then asked them questions. But some of the questions contained a hidden manipulation. One group was asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed into each other. Another group was asked how fast the cars were going when they contacted each other. 1 week later, the group that heard the word smashed was significantly more likely to remember seeing broken glass. There was no broken glass. Loftus had planted a detail with a single word, and the brain had grown it into a memory. She called this the misinformation effect, the idea that memory is not a recording. It is a living document, and like any document, it can be edited by a question, by a conversation, by a photograph, by something you read 3 days after the event. Every time you remember something, you do not simply replay it. You reconstruct it. And during reconstruction, new material gets woven in. The next time you remember it, you remember the reconstruction, which now includes the new material, and so on. Each recall is a slightly revised edition. And the older the memory, the more editions it has gone through. This is why childhood memories are so unreliable. Not because children have bad memories, but because those memories have been reconstructed hundreds of times. Every time your parents told the story at dinner, every time you looked at a photograph, every time someone else described it slightly differently, each retelling quietly updated the file. What you carry now is not the original event. It is the final draft, shaped by everything that came after. But here's where it gets stranger. Loftus took her research further. In a landmark study published in 1995, she and her colleague Jacqueline Pickrell gave participants a booklet containing short descriptions of 4 childhood events, supposedly provided by their families. 3 of the events were real. 1 was invented. The invented event was always the same. Getting lost in a shopping mall as a young child, becoming frightened, being helped by an elderly stranger, and eventually being reunited with the family. It had never happened. And yet, by the end of the study, roughly a quarter of participants not only believed the event had occurred, they began adding their own details to it. The stranger wore glasses. The mall had a particular smell. They remembered being scared, and then relieved, and then the feeling of their parents' hand. They remembered an event that had never taken place, with the emotional specificity of something that had scarred them for life. And then Loftus asked them to rate how confident they felt about their childhood memories. The false memory was rated as just as vivid, just as emotionally real as the genuine ones. In some cases, more so. Your brain does not have a fact-checking system for your own past. It has something closer to a novelist. And novelists do not check sources. They fill in what feels true, what completes the scene, what makes the emotional logic hold. The brain's goal when reconstructing a memory is not accuracy. It is coherence. It wants the story to make sense. It wants the pieces to fit. And if a piece is missing, it will manufacture one that belongs there. This is why the Mandela effect unsettles people so deeply. You have probably experienced it. The absolute certainty that something existed a certain way, a logo, a product name, a line from a film, and the disorientation of finding out it was never that way at all. Thousands of people share the same false memories. They all remember the same incorrect details with equal conviction. This is not coincidence. This is the natural result of shared culture, shared exposure, and a brain that uses emotional resonance rather than factual accuracy as its primary filing system. The things you remember most vividly are the things that mattered most emotionally, not the things that were most precisely encoded. Psychologist Daniel Schacter at Harvard University has spent decades mapping what he calls the 7 sins of memory: misattribution, suggestibility, bias, transience, absent-mindedness, blocking, and persistence. These are not random errors. They are predictable patterns. And one of the most consistent patterns across all of them is that the more emotionally meaningful something feels, the more confidently you believe your memory of it, and the more likely it is that the emotional weight has distorted the factual content. Your brain tags memories by feeling first, meaning second, accuracy barely at all. This is why two people can experience the same event and come away with entirely different memories of it, both completely certain, both unable to understand how the other person got it so wrong. They did not experience different events. They experienced the same event through different emotional filters. And those filters shaped what got encoded, what got reinforced, and what got quietly edited out every time the memory was recalled. There's something even more unsettling buried inside all of this. Researcher Julia Shaw at University College London demonstrated in a 2015 study that it is possible to implant an entirely false memory of committing a crime. Her team had participants meet the researcher for 3 short interviews. The researcher told each participant that their family had confirmed a childhood incident in which the participant had committed a minor assault, or had been involved with police, or had experienced a dramatic personal event, none of which had actually occurred. The researcher used memory retrieval techniques, encouraging participants to visualize the scene, to focus on emotional details, to try to access the feeling of the moment. By the 3rd interview, 70% of participants had produced a detailed false memory of committing the crime. They described the location, the feeling of panic afterward, the face of the person involved. They believed they had done something they had never done. The technique worked not because the researchers were manipulative. It worked because the brain is. When you are encouraged to imagine an event vividly enough, your brain begins treating the imagination as evidence. The act of picturing something creates the same neural patterns as the act of remembering it. Given enough repetition, the brain stops distinguishing between the two. And this is happening to you right now. Not in a laboratory. In ordinary life. Every time someone tells you their version of a shared event, your memory of it shifts slightly toward theirs. Every time you look at a photograph of a moment, your brain replaces some of what you actually experienced with what the photograph shows, the angle, the light, the cropped version of reality the camera captured. Every time you retell a story, you unconsciously refine it, trimming the parts that slow it down, adding small details that make it land better, smoothing the emotional arc until it feels right. And then you remember the refined version, not the original. The original is already gone. It began fading the moment it ended. There's a word in cognitive science for the accurate raw recording of an event as it happens in real time: encoding. And the honest truth about encoding is that even it is imperfect, shaped by attention, emotion, expectation, and the existing mental models your brain uses to interpret new information. You never had a perfect memory to begin with. You had a first draft, and every time you remembered it, you rewrote it. Elizabeth Loftus spent decades arguing that this had profound consequences, not just scientifically, but legally, ethically, personally. In courtrooms around the world, eyewitnesses were being asked to testify with total confidence about events their brains had reconstructed from fragments, suggestions, and emotional impressions. And juries were being asked to treat those testimonies as recordings rather than interpretations. Her work helped establish that eyewitness testimony, however sincere, is among the least reliable forms of evidence. But it also raises something harder than a legal question. If your memories of who you were, what happened to you, and how it felt are all living documents, perpetually edited, emotionally shaped, partially invented, then the autobiography you carry is not a record of the past. It is a story your brain has been writing and rewriting for your entire life, with you as both the author and the subject, never once suspecting that the story has been changing. The things you're most certain about are the things most likely to have drifted. The clearest memories carry the most revisions. The most vivid moments have been retouched the most times. There's a memory you're certain about. You can almost feel it. It seems as real and solid as anything you have ever known. Your brain wrote that, and it has been editing it ever since.